You know that moment when you walk into a room and accidentally stumble onto your boyfriend's entire double life? Yeah, me neither. Until that Sunday afternoon in March when I became the unwitting star of my own reality show disaster. I'm Skylar Monroe, 29, high school English teacher in a cozy suburb outside Boston. And up until 3 months ago, I thought my biggest problem was getting teenagers to care about Shakespeare. Spoiler alert. Turns out my real problem was that my boyfriend Bennett Collins had been method acting as a faithful partner for 3 years, while secretly auditioning for the role of deadbeat baby daddy on the side. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me paint you the picture of how my perfectly normal Sunday went completely off the rails. It was one of those lazy March afternoons, you know the kind, where it's still too cold to pretend spring is actually here, but you've already packed away your heavy winter coat out of sheer optimism and spite. I'd been grading essays on my laptop in the living room of the apartment Bennett and I shared in Cambridge, occasionally glancing up at the window overlooking our street, lined with brownstones that cost more than my annual salary. Bennett had been acting weird all week. Not, I'm planning a surprise party weird. More like, I'm hiding a body weird. Lots of hushed phone calls, mysterious errands. That thing where someone's physically present but mentally checked out to another zip code entirely. That afternoon, he'd been holed up in our bedroom for over an hour, claiming he was organizing paperwork for his job as a financial analyst. Because nothing says Sunday fun like alphabetizing bank statements, right? I needed to grab a sweater because our landlord apparently thought heat was optional, so I headed to the bedroom. Here's where I made my critical error. I didn't knock. In my defense, it was our bedroom. I'd been walking into that room without knocking for 3 years. Silly me, thinking I had unrestricted access to shared spaces in my own home. The door swung open, and there was Bennett, standing in front of our dresser, looking like someone who'd just been caught robbing a convenience store. His face went through approximately 17 different emotions in 2 seconds flat. Surprise, panic, guilt, and what I can only describe as, oh crap, the jig is up. In his hands was a manila envelope, and scattered across our bed were papers he'd clearly been trying to organize before I interrupted his little covert operation. But here's the thing about panic. It makes you clumsy. When he jerked around to face me, several papers went airborne like the world's most depressing confetti, and one piece slid gracefully under the bed like it was making a break for freedom. Hey, I didn't know you were... These are work documents, he stammered, which was weird because Bennett never stammered. The man could talk his way out of anything. Once convinced a police officer that running a red light was actually a creative interpretation of yellow. But right now, he sounded like a guilty teenager caught sneaking in past curfew. Okay, I said slowly, watching him frantically gather the papers like they were state secrets. Why are you acting like I just walked in on you counting stolen diamonds? I'm not. You startled me, that's all. He shoved everything into the envelope with all the grace of someone defusing a bomb while wearing oven mitts. I'm gonna run to Starbucks. Want anything? It was 2:30 in the afternoon. He'd already had coffee, but I just shrugged. Sure, a latte would be great. He practically sprinted out of that bedroom, grabbed his keys, and was out the door within 90 seconds. I stood there in the hallway, listening to his footsteps thunder down the stairs, wondering what exactly had just happened. Now, I'd like to tell you I'm not the snooping type. I'd like to tell you I respect privacy and boundaries and all those healthy relationship things they teach you in therapy. But come on, that was the most suspicious exit since Nixon left the White House. Something was very clearly wrong, and my gut was screaming at me louder than my students during a fire drill. I gave it exactly 3 minutes, long enough to make sure he wasn't coming back for his wallet or phone, and then I got down on my hands and knees next to our bed. Sure enough, there it was, a single piece of paper wedged under the bed frame, hiding in the dust bunnies I'd been meaning to vacuum for weeks. I pulled it out, and my entire world tilted sideways. It was an ultrasound image. You know those grainy black and white photos that look like someone spilled ink on a Rorschach test, but somehow everyone can see a baby in there. This one had very clear labels printed across the top. Patient name, Autumn Sullivan. Date, February 14th. Gestational age, 20 weeks, 5 months pregnant. Valentine's Day. My hands were shaking so badly the paper rattled. Attached to the ultrasound with a paperclip, because apparently even secret families get organized, was a handwritten note on cream-colored stationery. The kind you buy at those fancy paper stores where everything costs $12 per greeting card. The note read, in loopy feminine handwriting, "Can't wait for you to tell her. She deserves to know before baby arrives. Call me tonight. A." I sat there on our bedroom floor, clutching that ultrasound like it was evidence at a crime scene, which, honestly, it kind of was, and tried to do the mental math. February 14th was 4 weeks ago. 20 weeks pregnant meant conception happened around October. October, when Bennett had gone on that work conference to Portland for a long weekend. October, when I'd been proud of him for being so dedicated to his career. Turns out the only thing he'd been dedicated to was apparently making babies with someone named Autumn. Which, by the way, what kind of name is Autumn? It sounds like a pumpkin spice latte gained sentience and decided to steal someone's boyfriend. I couldn't breathe. The room felt like it was closing in, and I had approximately 8,000 questions ricocheting around my brain like pinballs. Who was Autumn Sullivan? How long had this been going on? Did he love her? Was he planning to leave me? Why hadn't he told me? And why was she the one telling him to come clean? But under all those questions was one crystal clear realization. Bennett Collins had been living a double life. And worse, he didn't even have the spine to tell me himself. He was going to keep hiding it, keep pretending, keep coming home to me every night while planning a whole separate future with someone else. I heard his key in the door downstairs. He was back with the coffee, probably hoping I'd dropped the whole weird incident and we could go back to pretending everything was fine. But here's the thing about English teachers. We're really, really good at reading subtext. And the subtext of that ultrasound was screaming one very clear message. My entire relationship was a lie. So I did what any rational woman would do. I carefully placed the ultrasound back under the bed exactly where I'd found it, stood up, smoothed my hair, and went to the living room to accept my latte with a smile. Because if Bennett wanted to play pretend, I could play that game too. Only this time, I was going to write the ending. The next 3 weeks were an Oscar-worthy performance, if I do say so myself. I should have gotten a SAG card for the sheer amount of acting I did. Every morning, I woke up next to Bennett and pretended I didn't know he was building a whole new family like some kind of twisted IKEA project. Every night, I asked about his day, and nodded along while he fed me lies smoother than the lattes he kept buying to ease his guilty conscience. But here's what Bennett didn't know. While he was busy playing House Season 2 with Autumn, I was conducting an investigation that would make the FBI jealous. Step 1 was figuring out who exactly Autumn Sullivan was. Turns out, when you're a high school English teacher with a free period and access to every social media platform known to humanity, you can find pretty much anyone, especially when they have a name like Autumn Sullivan and live in the greater Boston area. I found her on Facebook in approximately 4 minutes, which, honestly, was embarrassing for Bennett's operational security. If you're going to have a secret second family, maybe tell your baby mama to adjust her privacy settings. Just a thought. Autumn Sullivan, 26 years old, marketing coordinator at some tech startup in Cambridge. Loved posting inspirational quotes about divine timing and everything happens for a reason. Her profile picture showed a blonde woman with one of those faces that looked permanently surprised, like she'd just discovered taxes were real. Recent posts included a lot of vague posting about new chapters and unexpected blessings. The real kicker? We had 12 mutual friends. 12. People I knew. People who'd probably seen them together and said nothing. The suburbs are supposed to be boring and safe, not a hotbed of secret-keeping and side relationships. I scrolled through her photos with the dedication of a historian researching primary sources. There, October 23rd, a selfie at some waterfront restaurant in Portland. "Amazing weekend getaway," the caption read. And there, barely visible in the background reflection of the window, Bennett. My Bennett, wearing the navy sweater I'd bought him for his birthday. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Instead, I screenshotted everything like I was gathering evidence for court, which, let's be real, I might need eventually. But the real goldmine came when I found Autumn's Instagram. Less filtered, more candid. And there, from 3 weeks ago, was a photo of her hand holding what looked like a positive pregnancy test, captioned, "When you realize your whole life is about to change. Scared but excited. He says we'll figure it out together." 47 likes, including one from someone named Rebecca Sullivan, probably her sister, based on the identical surprised face genetics in her profile picture. I spent my lunch periods at school down a research rabbit hole that would have impressed my AP students. I learned that Autumn worked 2 blocks from Bennett's office, that she frequently posted about her love of true crime podcasts. Ironic, considering she was actively participating in a crime against my sanity. That she'd recently started following a bunch of parenting accounts and baby stores. Meanwhile, Bennett was home every night by 6:30, acting like the world's most devoted boyfriend. He'd ask about my day, pretend to care about my students' latest essay disasters, and suggest we start planning a summer vacation to Cape Cod. Cape Cod. Like we were going to be holding hands on the beach in July while his other baby mama was probably learning how to change diapers. The audacity was truly breathtaking. "You seem distracted lately," he said one evening while we were eating Thai takeout on the couch. We'd been together long enough that date night meant putting on pants and sitting upright instead of eating in bed. "Just tired," I said, twirling pad thai around my fork. "Standardized testing season. You know how it is." He nodded sympathetically, like he understood anything about my job beyond the fact that I complained about grading papers. "You work too hard. Maybe we should do something fun this weekend. Go to that new brunch place in Somerville?" Brunch. He wanted to take me to brunch while his pregnant girlfriend was probably picking out baby names and nursery colors. The man had compartmentalization skills that would impress a CIA operative. "Sure," I said sweetly. "That sounds great." What I was really thinking, I wonder if Autumn likes brunch too. Maybe we could make it a group activity. Really lean into the whole sister-wives situation he's apparently trying to create. I started noticing other things too. Little inconsistencies I'd missed before because I'd been too trusting. Or, let's be honest, too naive. The way he'd angle his phone away when texting. How he'd suddenly started working late on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The same nights Autumn posted Instagram stories from various restaurants around Cambridge, always with a strategically cropped photo that never showed her dining companion. One Tuesday, I told Bennett I had book club. I didn't, but he didn't know that. And followed him. I know. Peak crazy girlfriend behavior. But in my defense, I wasn't the crazy one in this relationship. I was just the one catching up to reality. I watched him park outside a sushi restaurant in Harvard Square and meet Autumn at the entrance. She was showing, definitely showing, in that way where it could still maybe be explained away as ate a big lunch to strangers, but was obviously a baby bump to anyone paying attention. He put his hand on her back as they walked in, the same way he touched me. Nothing special, nothing unique, just another Tuesday night with another version of his life. I sat in my car across the street, eating a sad desk salad I'd grabbed from the deli, and watched them through the window. They looked happy, comfortable, like people who'd been together for years, not like the result of what I'd calculated was probably a drunken hookup during a work conference. That's when it hit me. Bennett wasn't torn between 2 women. He wasn't conflicted. He'd simply decided he could have both, and nobody had stopped him yet. I was convenient. The steady girlfriend, the acceptable +1 for work events, the person who reminded him to buy birthday cards for his mom. Autumn was exciting. The new relationship energy, the adventure, the validation that he was still attractive and desirable. And the baby? Well, that was just an unfortunate side effect of his inability to grasp basic consequences. I drove home and waited for him to return, which he did around 9:30. Full of apologies about how the client meeting ran late and traffic was brutal. "No worries," I said, looking up from my laptop where I'd been researching Massachusetts paternity laws. You know, light evening reading. "How was the meeting?" "Boring. Standard stuff." He kissed the top of my head absently. "I'm gonna shower." As he walked away, I called out, "Hey, Bennett." He turned. "Yeah. Do you ever feel like life just has a way of catching up with you? Like, you can run from your choices for a while, but eventually, everything comes full circle? He looked confused. That's pretty philosophical for a Tuesday night. I smiled. Just something one of my students wrote in an essay today. Really stuck with me. After he disappeared into the bathroom, I opened my laptop and started a new document. At the top, I typed, Operation Autumn Surprise, a comprehensive plan. Because here's what I'd learned from teaching teenagers about dramatic irony. The audience always knows more than the characters think they do. And right now, I was the audience, the writer, and about to become the director of the most satisfying third act Bennett Collins would never see coming. I had his parents' address. I had Autumn's phone number from her public Instagram profile. And I had exactly 2 weeks until Bennett's mother's annual spring celebration dinner, a fancy Sunday gathering where she invited the whole family to show off her new patio furniture and judge everyone's life choices over expensive wine and cheese boards from Whole Foods. Bennett had mentioned it last month, said we were expected to attend, said his mom was really looking forward to seeing us. Well, she was about to see a lot more than she bargained for. Time to send some invitations. Planning the perfect revenge is a lot like planning a lesson for teenagers. You need a clear objective, you need to anticipate every possible disruption, and you need a backup plan for when someone inevitably tries to derail everything by asking if this is going to be on the test. Except in this case, the test was Bennett's entire life, and he was about to fail spectacularly. I spent the next week operating like a military strategist. Every spare moment, my morning coffee, my lunch period, the time Bennett thought I was grading papers, I was refining Operation Autumn Surprise. The plan was simple in concept, but required precision timing that would make a Swiss watchmaker proud. Bennett's mother, Patricia Collins, hosted her spring dinner every year on the last Sunday of April. It was one of those mandatory family gatherings where attendance wasn't optional unless you were literally deceased. And even then, she'd probably expect you to send a card. Patricia was a retired real estate agent who treated social events like closing deals. Everything had to be perfect. Everyone had to perform. And any deviation from her vision was a personal insult. She lived in Lexington, in one of those colonial houses that cost more than I'd make in 3 lifetimes of teaching, complete with a professionally landscaped yard that had probably been photographed for better homes and gardens. Bennett had 3 siblings, 2 brothers and a sister, all married, all successful, all perpetually competing for Patricia's approval, like they were on some twisted game show, which is why this dinner was the perfect stage for my production. Step 1, confirm the guest list. I casually asked Bennett about it one night while we were watching some crime documentary on Netflix. The irony of watching criminals get caught while planning to expose one was not lost on me. So, who's going to be at your mom's dinner? I asked, keeping my eyes on the TV. The usual. Tyler and Jennifer, Mark and Christine, Vanessa and David. Probably around 15 people total with the kids. He was scrolling through his phone, barely paying attention. Mom's going all out this year, hired a catering company and everything. Perfect. An audience. Step 2, get Autumn's contact information. I already had her Instagram, but I needed a more direct line. That's when I had a stroke of genius, or desperation, depending on how you looked at it. I created a fake email account using one of those anonymous services, pretending to be from a local parenting magazine doing a feature on modern moms-to-be in Boston. I sent Autumn a message explaining that we'd come across her inspiring Instagram posts and would love to interview her about her pregnancy journey. Could she provide the best contact number? She responded within 3 hours with her cell number and an enthusiastic, "I'd love to participate." The woman was about to participate in something all right, just not what she was expecting. Step 3, the invitation. This was the delicate part. I couldn't just text Autumn and say, "Hey, want to crash my boyfriend's family dinner and blow up both our lives?" I needed her to want to be there. I needed her to feel like she had every right to attend. So I waited until exactly 1 week before the dinner. Bennett was in the shower, his nightly ritual that took approximately 20 minutes, because apparently men also need extensive skincare routines now. And I used his phone. I'd watched him enter his passcode enough times to memorize it. 4 digits. 0815. August 15th. His birthday. Because Bennett was exactly the type of person who'd use the most obvious password possible and think he was being secure. I opened his messages with Autumn. Reading through them was like getting punched in the stomach repeatedly, but I powered through. Lots of miss you and can't wait to see you, and thinking about baby names. He called her Audie. I wanted to throw his phone in the toilet, but I had a job to do. I typed carefully, mimicking his texting style. Hey, Audie. Been thinking. Maybe it's time to tell my family about us and the baby. Mom's having her spring dinner next Sunday at 2 p.m. Would mean a lot if you came. Think we should do this together. Address is 47 Meadowbrook Lane, Lexington. Let me introduce you properly. I read it 3 times, checking for anything that sounded off. Then I hit send. The 3 dots appeared immediately. She was typing. Really? Are you sure? I don't want to pressure you, but I've been hoping you'd say this. I'll be there. Love you. I deleted the entire conversation from his phone, cleared it from his recently deleted, and put the phone back exactly where he'd left it on the nightstand. The shower turned off. Bennett emerged in a cloud of steam, completely oblivious to the fact that his 2 worlds were about to collide like planets in a disaster movie. You okay? He asked, noticing me sitting on the bed. You look pale. Just tired, I said. Long week? Well, only a few more days until Mom's dinner. That should be fun, right? He smiled, drying his hair with a towel. Fun. That was certainly one word for it. Step 4. Prepare my own exit strategy. Because here's the thing about exposing someone's lies in front of their entire family. You need to be ready for the aftermath. I wasn't just blowing up Bennett's life. I was potentially burning down my own in the process. I spent Tuesday afternoon at my bank, opening a new checking account in just my name. Transferred half of what we had in our joint savings. Money I'd contributed to equally, despite Bennett always acting like he was the primary breadwinner, because financial analysts apparently ranked higher than teachers in his mental hierarchy. I packed a bag with essentials and left it in my car trunk. Clothes, toiletries, important documents, my laptop. Called my best friend Marin, also a teacher. The kind of person who wouldn't ask questions until after she'd already helped you hide the body, and asked if I could crash at her place in Brookline for a few days next week. Everything okay? She'd asked, concern evident in her voice. It will be, I told her. I'll explain Sunday night. Wednesday, I drove to Lexington and parked down the street from Patricia's house, timing how long it took to get there from different routes. 14 minutes from Cambridge if you took Route 2. I needed to know exactly when to arrive, early enough to beat Autumn, late enough that Bennett would already be comfortable and complacent. I felt like a spy, or possibly unhinged. The line was getting blurry. Thursday night, Bennett suggested we bring wine to his mother's dinner. She loves that Cabernet from Trader Joe's, he said. I'll pick some up, I offered sweetly. Anything else we need? You're the best, he said, kissing my forehead like I was a helpful roommate instead of the girlfriend he was systematically betraying. I bought the wine Friday after school, also bought myself a bottle of whiskey for after the dinner because I was going to need it. Saturday was the hardest day. Bennett was around the apartment all day, cheerful and attentive, suggesting we watch movies and order pizza like it was a normal weekend, like we had a future. Like Sunday wasn't going to detonate our entire relationship in front of his mother's expensive appetizer spread. I'm really glad we have tomorrow, he said that night while we were in bed. Family stuff can be stressful, but it's nice doing it together. You and me. I stared at the ceiling in the dark, his arm around me, and thought about Autumn probably having the exact same conversation with him on Tuesday and Thursday nights. Yeah, I said. Tomorrow's definitely going to be memorable. Love you, he mumbled, already half asleep. I didn't say it back. Hadn't been able to say it genuinely in 3 weeks. He didn't notice. Sunday morning, I woke up at 7. Bennett was still sleeping, one arm thrown over his face like he didn't have a care in the world. I looked at him and tried to remember why I'd fallen for him in the first place. The charm, maybe. The confidence. The way he'd made me feel chosen. Now I just felt like an option he'd gotten too comfortable with. I got up quietly and got ready. Wore a navy dress, professional, put together, the kind of outfit you wear when you want to look like the sane one in the room. Did my makeup carefully. If I was going to watch my relationship implode, I was going to look good doing it. Bennett woke up at 9, stretching and smiling. "Big day," he said. "The biggest," I agreed. We had breakfast. He read news on his phone. I mentally rehearsed what I'd say, how I'd stand, where I'd position myself for maximum impact. At 1:30, we got in the car. Bennett drove, talking about random things, work gossip, something funny he'd seen online, speculation about what his mother's catering company would serve. I watched the familiar streets pass by, knowing this was the last car ride we'd take together, the last normal moment before everything changed. At exactly 1:55, we pulled up to his mother's house. Several cars already lined the circular driveway. Bennett parked, grabbed the wine from the back seat, and looked at me. "Ready?" he asked. I smiled. "More than you know." We walked to the front door together. He rang the bell. Patricia answered, already dressed in her hosting outfit, looking like she'd stepped out of a J. Crew catalog. "There you are," she exclaimed, hugging us both. Come in, come in. Everyone's in the dining room." We stepped inside. The house smelled like expensive catering and fresh flowers. I could hear conversation and laughter from the other room. Bennett's hand found mine, squeezing it like we were a team. In exactly 5 minutes, Autumn Sullivan would ring this same doorbell, and then the real party would start. The Collins family dining room looked like something out of a home decor magazine, the kind where everything is strategically placed to look casual, but probably cost someone's monthly salary. Patricia had gone all out. White linen tablecloth, fresh flower centerpieces that screamed, "I have a florist on speed dial," and enough artisanal cheese to feed a small village. Bennett's siblings were already there with their spouses, making small talk about their perfect lives. Tyler, the oldest, was a corporate lawyer who loved reminding everyone about it. Mark worked in pharmaceutical sales and drove a Tesla he mentioned every 15 minutes. Vanessa was a pediatric dentist married to David, who did something in finance that I'd never fully understood and honestly didn't care about. Their kids, ranging from ages 4 to 9, were contained in the living room with iPads, because nothing says family gathering like technological babysitting. "Skylar, dear, you look lovely," Patricia said, air kissing near my cheek in that way wealthy people do to avoid actually touching you. "Bennett, be a dear and help your father with the drinks in the kitchen." Bennett squeezed my hand and disappeared, leaving me alone with his mother. She was eyeing me with that particular look mothers give their sons' long-term girlfriends, the "when are you going to make this official" look mixed with, "I hope you're not after his money." "So," she began, and I knew exactly where this was going. "You and Bennett have been together quite a while now." 3 years, I confirmed, checking my watch. 1:58. Autumn should be arriving any minute. That's a significant amount of time. Patricia smiled that tight smile women her age had perfected. "I do hope we'll have some exciting news to celebrate soon." If she only knew. The doorbell rang. Patricia's perfectly maintained eyebrows rose slightly. "Oh, I wasn't expecting anyone else." "Excuse me." I followed her to the foyer, my heart hammering against my ribs. Through the frosted glass of the front door, I could see a blonde figure. Patricia opened it, and there stood Autumn Sullivan, wearing a floral maternity dress that left absolutely zero doubt about her condition, holding a bottle of sparkling cider and looking nervous. "Hello?" Patricia said, confusion evident in her voice. "Can I help you?" Autumn's smile faltered. "Hi, I'm Autumn. I'm here for the dinner." Bennett invited me. She patted her very visible baby bump. "We thought it was time to tell the family about us and the baby." The silence that followed could have shattered glass. Patricia's face cycled through confusion, shock, and something approaching fury in about 3 seconds. "I'm sorry. There must be some mistake. Bennett is—" "Right here," Bennett said, emerging from the kitchen with 2 wine glasses. He froze mid-step when he saw Autumn, his face draining of all color. The glasses slipped from his hands, shattering on the hardwood floor in a spray of crystal and Cabernet. "Surprise!" I said brightly from behind Patricia. Looks like someone forgot to mention he double-booked this afternoon. Bennett? Autumn's voice was small, confused. What's going on? You said... She pulled out her phone, reading from their messages. You said you wanted to introduce me properly to your family, that it was time. I didn't... Bennett started, but his voice cracked. He looked at me, and I watched the exact moment he realized what I'd done. Skylar, what did you do? Me? I placed my hand over my heart in mock innocence. I didn't do anything except help you with that communication problem you've been having. You know, the one where you forgot to mention to me that you've been building a whole second family? Or the one where you forgot to tell Autumn that you already had a girlfriend? Communication is so important in relationships, Bennett. I'm just facilitating. By now, the entire family had gathered in the foyer. Tyler, Mark, Vanessa, and their spouses stood frozen, watching the scene unfold like they'd accidentally walked onto a reality TV set. Who is this woman? Patricia demanded, looking at Autumn like she was a particularly offensive piece of lawn furniture someone had left on her doorstep. I'm his girlfriend, Autumn said, her voice shaking. We've been together for 8 months. I'm 5 months pregnant with his baby. That's funny, I interjected, because I'm also his girlfriend. Have been for 3 years. Though I'm not pregnant, so I guess I lose points there. Bennett looked like he wanted the expensive hardwood floors to open up and swallow him whole. This is not... I can explain. Oh, I would love to hear this explanation, Vanessa said, crossing her arms. She'd never particularly liked Bennett, and the schadenfreude on her face was undeniable. This should be good. You told me you were single, Autumn said, tears starting to form in her eyes. You said you worked late because of client meetings. You said... She turned to me. You knew about this. About me? Only for about 3 weeks, I said. Found the ultrasound he was hiding. The one dated February 14th, Valentine's Day. Which is poetic, really. Nothing says I love you like conceiving a secret baby. Ultrasound? Patricia's voice could have cut steel. Benjamin Thomas Collins. Is this true? The use of his full name was devastating. Bennett actually flinched. Mom, I can explain. I think you've done enough, Tyler interrupted. Dude, what is wrong with you? Bennett's face was red, sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. It's not. It just happened. We met at a conference and things got complicated and I didn't know how to act like a decent human being, Mark supplied. Yeah, that does seem complicated for you. Autumn was fully crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. You said you loved me. You talked about baby names. You said we'd get a place together in the fall. This was news to me. A place together? He'd been planning to leave? The fall? I repeated. Wow, Bennett, really planning ahead. Were you going to tell me before or after you moved out? I needed time. He was spiraling, trying to look at everyone at once and failing miserably. Time for what? Patricia's voice was ice. Time to destroy 2 women's lives? Time to create a child you clearly had no intention of being responsible for? I am being responsible, Bennett protested. I was going to tell everyone. I just needed to figure out the right way. The right way was not getting someone pregnant while in a committed relationship, David offered helpfully. Even Patricia's husband, Bennett's father Richard, a usually quiet man, was shaking his head in disgust. Autumn turned to me, and I saw genuine pain in her eyes. Did you know he was with me when you were together? Not until I found your ultrasound under our bed, I said, my voice gentler now. Because here's the thing. Autumn wasn't the villain. She was a victim of Bennett's lies just like me. He told me he was at work conferences. Told me he loved me. Told me we were planning a future. Turns out he's just really good at telling people what they want to hear. We live together, Autumn whispered, looking at Bennett with betrayal written across her face. You're at my apartment Tuesday and Thursday nights. You have clothes in my closet. She stopped, hand on her stomach. Oh my God, I'm having a baby with someone who doesn't exist. I do exist, Bennett said weakly. You just what? Forgot you can't be in 2 places at once? I supplied. Forgot that lies have consequences? Forgot that human beings have feelings? Patricia straightened her shoulders, transforming into the formidable real estate closer she'd been for 30 years. "Everyone to the dining room. Now. Except you." She pointed at Bennett. "You stay here. We're going to have a conversation." We filed into the dining room like children being sent to the principal's office, leaving Bennett alone with his mother. Through the wall, we could hear Patricia's voice, low and furious, delivering what sounded like a masterclass in maternal disappointment. Autumn sat down heavily in one of the dining chairs, still crying. Vanessa, to her credit, got her a glass of water and some tissues. "I'm sorry this happened to both of you," she said, looking between me and Autumn. "My brother is apparently a complete disaster. I feel so stupid," Autumn sobbed. "All the signs were there. The nights he couldn't stay over, the way he never posted about us on social media. I just thought he was private." "He was private, all right," I said, sitting across from her. "Privately terrible." "What are you going to do?" she asked me. "Me? I'm going to finish this very expensive catered dinner that Patricia paid for, drink some excellent wine, and then go stay with my friend Marin until I find a new apartment." I looked at her. "What are you going to do?" She touched her stomach. "I guess I'm going to figure out how to be a single mom. I can't be with someone who did this." "Good choice," Mark said. "For what it's worth, we'll make sure he pays child support. Our family doesn't run from responsibilities, even if Bennett tried to." 20 minutes later, Bennett slunk into the dining room looking like he'd aged 10 years. Patricia followed, her expression carved from granite. "Bennett has something to say," she announced. He cleared his throat, not making eye contact with anyone. "I'm sorry. To both of you, and to the family. I messed up. I'll take responsibility for the baby, Autumn. And Skylar, I'll move out this week. You can keep the apartment." "How generous," I said dryly, "considering it's in my name and I pay half the rent." His face reddened further. "We're done here," Patricia said coldly. "Bennett, you can leave. Everyone else, please stay. Let's try to salvage something from this disaster." And that's how Bennett Collins slunk out of his mother's house in disgrace, leaving behind 2 women, 1 baby, and the smoking ruins of his reputation. We actually did eat dinner. It was weird and awkward, but the food was excellent. And honestly, I'd been too nervous to eat all day. Autumn and I sat on the same side of the table, united in our mutual betrayal, while Bennett's siblings took turns apologizing for their brother's behavior and offering various forms of support. Turns out, the Collins family might have been pretentious and competitive, but they weren't okay with what Bennett had done. By the time I left, I had Tyler's law firm's card, Patricia's promise that we'll make sure he does right by both of you, and Autumn's phone number. The last thing I saw as I drove away was Bennett's car still parked in the driveway, him sitting inside, alone, probably contemplating how spectacularly he'd destroyed everything in under an hour. It was, without question, the most satisfying Sunday dinner I'd ever attended. 6 months later, I was sitting in my new apartment in Somerville, a cozy 1-bedroom with exposed brick and windows that actually let in sunlight, drinking coffee and scrolling through my phone when I got a text from an unexpected source. "Autumn. Baby girl arrived. 7 beers, 3 O's. Her name is Hazel. Thought you'd want to know." Attached was a photo of a tiny, wrinkly newborn with a surprising amount of dark hair, wrapped in one of those hospital blankets that somehow all look the same. I smiled and typed back, "She's beautiful. Congratulations, Mama. You've got this." Because here's the plot twist nobody saw coming, least of all me. Autumn and I became friends. Not best friends. We weren't braiding each other's hair and having sleepovers, but real friends. The kind who checked in on each other, sent funny memes about terrible dating experiences, and occasionally met for coffee when her pregnancy cravings demanded very specific pastries from that bakery in Cambridge. Turns out, shared trauma over the same lying man creates a surprisingly solid foundation for friendship. Who knew? As for Bennett? Well, karma didn't just catch up with him. It ran him over, backed up, and ran him over again for good measure. Patricia, true to her word, made sure he faced every consequence of his actions. She hired Tyler to handle the legal aspects, ensuring Autumn got proper child support, a solid chunk of Bennett's salary, calculated down to the last dollar. Bennett tried to argue it was too much, that he had his own expenses. Tyler's response, delivered with the cold precision of a lawyer who'd been waiting years to take his little brother down a peg, was, "Should have thought about that before you decided to practice addition without protection." Bennett's financial analyst job? Gone. Turns out, when word got around his office about his extracurricular activities, and it did because one of his coworkers was friends with Mark's wife, his employers decided someone who made such catastrophically bad personal decisions probably shouldn't be trusted with other people's money. Can't say I disagreed with that logic. He ended up moving back in with Patricia and Richard for 3 months, at 32 years old, while he looked for new work. Living in his childhood bedroom, subject to his mother's daily reminders of his failures. Patricia treated it like a rehabilitation program, complete with chore charts and lectures about integrity. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. Eventually, he found a job at a smaller firm with less prestige and significantly less pay. Got himself a studio apartment in Malden, the kind with thin walls and a radiator that clanked like it was possessed. Started his court-mandated visitation with baby Hazel every other weekend, though Autumn reported he seemed terrified of actually holding his own daughter. He just stares at her like she's a bomb that might go off. Autumn told me over coffee one afternoon, 4 months post-delivery. Last week he called me in a panic because she needed a diaper change. She was at his place, for the weekend. And he called me. Yikes, I said, sipping my latte. So fatherhood is going well, I see. He tries. I'll give him that. But trying and succeeding are very different things. She paused. Have you heard from him at all? Not since I blocked his number the day after the dinner. He sent approximately 47 texts, trying to explain, apologize, bargain, and eventually insult me when I didn't respond. I read the first 5, got bored of the excuses, and hit block. Good for you. Autumn looked at me seriously. I never thanked you properly. For what you did. I mean, at the time I was furious and humiliated and wanted to die. But if you hadn't orchestrated that whole thing, I'd probably still be believing his lies. Raising a baby with someone who didn't respect either of us. You would have figured it out eventually, I said. I just accelerated the timeline. Still, you could have just left quietly, packed up and ghosted. Instead, you made sure I knew the truth too. That took guts. And weirdly, kindness. I'd never thought of it as kindness, but maybe she was right. Maybe making sure another woman didn't waste years on the same man who'd wasted 3 of mine was its own form of compassion. As for me, I threw myself into teaching with renewed energy, picked up a creative writing class at a community college on weekends, and started actually dating, though this time with significantly higher standards and a much more finely tuned radar for red flags. I went on dates with guys who had their lives together, who didn't need to lie because they had nothing to hide, who understood that having one girlfriend at a time wasn't an advanced concept, but rather the baseline of human decency. 4 months after the great family dinner explosion, as Vanessa had dubbed it in a group text, I met Elliot at a bookstore reading. He was a literature professor at Boston University, had kind eyes, a dry sense of humor that matched mine, and most importantly, absolutely no secret families hiding anywhere. Our first date was coffee that turned into dinner, that turned into a 4-hour conversation about everything from favorite novels to most embarrassing teaching moments. He made me laugh, made me feel seen, never once checked his phone like he was hiding something. When I told him about Bennett, because honesty seemed important after everything, he listened without judgment and then said, "That guy sounds like he was operating without a manual on how to be a decent person. But his loss is definitely my gain." It was possibly the corniest thing anyone had ever said to me, and I loved it. Patricia occasionally texted me, usually forwarding articles about teaching or asking my opinion on books for her book club. She'd apologized profusely for Bennett's behavior, as if she was personally responsible for how her adult son turned out. I assured her that everyone's choices were their own, and that honestly, the dinner had given me some of the best closure I could have asked for. "You're always welcome at family gatherings," she'd written once. "You were better for this family than my son deserved." I declined but appreciated the sentiment. Looking back, the whole experience taught me something valuable. You can't control other people's lives, but you can control how you respond to the truth. I could have confronted Bennett privately, let him spin more stories, maybe even believed his excuses for a while longer. Instead, I chose the nuclear option: public exposure, maximum fallout, zero room for denial. Some people might call that vindictive. I called it efficient. Because here's what I learned teaching high school English for 7 years. Stories matter. The narratives we tell ourselves about our lives shape who we become. For 3 years, I'd been living in Bennett's story, playing a role he'd written for me without my knowledge. When I found that ultrasound, I realized I could either stay in his fiction or write my own ending. So I wrote one. With witnesses, consequences, and a plot twist he never saw coming. Would I do it again? Absolutely. 10 out of 10 would orchestrate dramatic family dinner exposures again. Standing in my sunny Somerville apartment, coffee in hand, phone buzzing with a text from Elliot suggesting dinner plans, I couldn't help but smile at how differently things had turned out from what I'd imagined a year ago. Bennett had taught me what I didn't want: lies, compartmentalization, being someone's convenient option. Elliot was showing me what I did want: honesty, respect, being someone's actual choice. And Autumn? She was discovering her own strength as a single mom, raising Hazel with support from the Collins family, minus Bennett, who was perpetually struggling to figure out basic parenting, and building a life that didn't revolve around a man who'd never deserved her trust. As for that ultrasound that started everything, I'd kept it, not out of bitterness, but as a reminder. Sometimes the worst discoveries lead to the best transformations. Life had a funny way of working out once you stopped letting other people write your story. And honestly, my ending was way better than anything Bennett could have come up with. The best revenge wasn't the public humiliation or watching his life fall apart, though those were satisfying bonuses. The best revenge was simply moving forward into something genuine, leaving him behind in the wreckage of his own making. Turns out, when you stop accepting less than you deserve, you make room for something actually worth having. Who knew?